There's nothing quite like standing up in front of a bunch of people that's going to trigger a whole bunch of self-doubt. Like at 6 a.m. this morning, that was fun. That aside, really good friend of mine actually said to me, he said, you know, when it comes to delivering talks, the butterflies never go away. What you learn is how to make them fly in formation. So hopefully today, thank you, Theo, for that, my very handsome brother-in-law and DJ today. I walk my talk a little bit, and you take away one tool from, I think, my workshop, which will help you deal with your own self-doubt. Okay, so crisis, challenge. I think, you know, if you've been around for a while, like we have, right, you've probably had a few things happen in your life which are pretty intense. Crisis, challenge presents itself in so many ways externally, but I think what we're talking about today really is that internal battle, right? The thoughts that keep us up at night, the things that hunt us down at work, I'm going to get up here and not know what to say. I'm going to fail at my job. I'm going to disappoint the people I love. I'm going to be a failure. I'm never going to get where I want to be in life. Does that resonate with anyone? No? Yeah? Okay. So we've all been there. And, you know, I think the thing I want to say is, you know, a lot of people are going to get up here and talk today, and there are going to be lots of different tools and messages and quotes, and it's just to take what works. So really, what I'm going to offer you today, it's not a fix-all, it's just an experience, and I hope that through this experience, you can learn to engage slightly differently with that tape, that doubt in your head, and, you know, it just shifts things up a little bit for you, okay? All right, so simple exercise. I want you just to reflect back on your week now and to think about the things that you're proud of or the things that you've done that, you know, were hard and maybe you didn't do it as well as you thought you would, but you did it anyway. Things you're proud of. Just take a second and reflect on that. And then I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them 2 or 3 of those things. So I flew back from Hong Kong to Singapore on Wednesday. And I don't know if you know, but there were 2 typhoons in the area. Yeah. So I hate flying. So of course I'm looking up the weather before I get on the plane and oh my gosh, you know, these 2 typhoons and how's the plane going to navigate back? And sure enough, it was bad. It was pretty bad. The stewardess was strapped in there, you know, and my heart's going, oh my gosh, you know, and besides, you know, I was somewhere between self-doubt and blind panic, right? And I thought to myself, okay, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to try and do the thing that, you know, I tell people to do, right, in therapy with them, which is to think of the things that make me feel good, to think of the places where I feel strong, to think of the things that I'm proud of. That's the other narrative, right? Besides, this plane is going to go down right now and it's going to be awful. So my list was, you know, I reflected on my week and what I wrote was, I'm doing my best. I'm meaning well and having good intentions for people, expressing love when I can, looking after my daughter pretty well, looking after the apartment pretty consistently, staying connected with authenticity, being vulnerable, keeping my sense of humor even when things were hard. Now, how often do I do this? Probably not often enough, but it felt really good. And I hope that just even in this short space, just taking a moment to think about the things and where you're proud, to share that with someone else felt good, felt different, you know, felt new. And think about that, right? If you go through your day constantly just thinking about where you fell short or what you didn't accomplish, that becomes your narrative, right? That becomes your truth. That becomes where you live. But there are all these other narratives that are running parallel to that and are just as valid. So let's get into the meat. Our self-critic. Everybody's self-critic looks a little different. This is one dude. What's interesting is, you know, scientists have discovered that self-criticism is pretty universal. And whenever they discover something like that, they go, oh, that's pretty cool. That means that it's locked away somewhere in our evolution, right? It served a purpose if, as human beings, we're all doing this. And so Kristen Neff, she's somebody involved in the Self-Compassion Project. I don't know if you've heard of it. But she says that she believes our self-critic evolved to protect us. Now, that sounds strange, right? Why would that be? Criticism doesn't feel good. But what happens actually, if you look at the brain, is when you criticize yourself, you release stress hormones, you release cortisol. It doesn't feel good, right? It feels bad. And it's actually an alarm system that's saying, uh-oh, danger. Danger, 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 retreat, fight, freeze, do something different, right? Keep yourself safe, restore balance. And she believed this was important because we used to live as hunter-gatherers in social groups, right? So if you didn't have a system to monitor whether or not you were staying aligned with that group, you might get chucked out. And getting chucked out in hunter-gatherer times meant what? Death, right? Isolation, deprivation, death. So the idea is that we've evolved this critic, which gives us a shot of cortisol and makes us feel really bad every time it goes, uh-oh, you're not acting in line with the social norms, or, you're going to flunk out of school, or you're going to get fired at work, right? And it plays in your head, and it's actually trying to protect you, even though it doesn't feel that way, right? And that's important for us to be aware of in terms of the exercise we're going to do today. Okay, so just ideas about what your critic might look like. I don't know. This is the Balrog, Gandalf's deepest, darkest fear in the pits of Moria, for anyone who likes Lord of the Rings. Or maybe your critic looks a little like this. Or like this. This one's interesting. This one comes up in therapy quite a lot. This is the Miss Perfect, right? Who's kind of standing in your mind and saying, you should look like this, and you should be able to do it all. Or maybe it's just a storm out at sea, which is creating a lot of fog and preventing you from seeing clearly. Now, I'm giving you these examples because when we do the little experience that I'm going to do with you, you're going to have to visualize what your critic looks like. So it helps to have a few examples. So what do we do traditionally with the critic? Who's nice to your critic when it comes up? Yeah, we like it, feels good? No, it feels terrible, right? We hate our critic. We have so much resentment. Usually we'll say, shut up, go away, I don't know, distract ourselves. We do anything not to listen to it, right? We hate it. And unfortunately, when we do that, we create more conflict. Because if you come back to what I was saying, which is your critic is essentially trying to protect you, what's going to happen, right? It's playing a job it believes is important. So when you fight against it, it actually gets discombobulated, insecure, and goes, uh-oh, this is going to be even worse. I'm going to shout even louder. I'm going to have to say this even more because, she or he's not listening, right? So fighting the critic or trying to suppress it actually just creates more darkness, more stress. What do we do? So we start with knowing our critics are not the enemy. They want to protect us, and they need our compassion. I love this quote by the poet Rainer Maria. She says, perhaps all the dragons of our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us once beautiful and brave. Perhaps everything terrible is in its deepest being something helpless that wants help from us. And I think that's interesting, right? When you take the sting out of it and you begin to think, well, maybe this is a voice coming up within me that just wants to be heard. How would you engage with it differently if you began to look at it like that? So if you bear with me, I think I'm going to ask for the lights to be dimmed a little. We're going to do a little exercise together. It's based on a theory called internal family systems theory. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Richard Schwartz, he believed that we all have different subparts within us, and that these parts have evolved at different points in our lives to protect us. And the critic is one that's very common, obviously, as I've said. So just a couple of things to remember while we do this. Just permission to let yourself experience whatever happens. There's no right or wrong way to do this. To go with it, to be open, to see what happens. And at the end of it, I'm actually not going to say too much. I'm going to leave you to reflect on whatever happened. And we'll take it from there. Okay? So if everybody could just close their eyes. I'm just going to, thank you. what I want you to do is just to start taking a few breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, and just settling into your chair, into your space. Just maybe beginning to feel yourself drop into a calmer space. And I want you now to imagine yourself somewhere outdoors, somewhere in nature. Perhaps the place that you imagined earlier when Robin was speaking. You feel safe here, you feel grounded, you feel inspired. And I want you now to imagine that standing in front of you is the visual manifestation, the physical form of your internal critic. Just go with whatever comes up. There's no right or wrong. I want you to observe your critic. I want you to observe how it moves. How it looks. How it makes you feel. Just really take a good look at it. It's probably the first time you've engaged with it this way. And then what I want you to do is, in whatever way feels natural, feels the most authentic, to express to it that you see it. I see you. I see you. I recognize you have been in my life for a long time, and you have been here to protect me. I recognize that you have come with good intentions, and while our relationship has not been smooth, that you're here to serve a purpose. And I just want you to keep imagining yourself sending it that validation, gratitude, and to give it permission to respond, to change, to engage with you however it would like. To imagine yourself now sending it light from your being into it. And just for everyone now to place their hands over their heart and just keeping your eyes closed, just continuing to breathe. Just honoring yourself for being present with the process, doing something different today, beginning a conversation with part of you in a different way, from a different space, a conversation you can continue to have whenever you feel your critic raise its head, get concerned. How you can continue to say in moments outside this room that you recognize it now. You see it, you recognize its importance, what it's trying to do. You give it permission to relax. You give yourselves permission to have a different relationship. Great. Okay, so if we could just turn up the lights. Good. So, I've never done that in a room of this many people. I'm sure people had different experiences, which is why I don't want to comment on it too much, except to say I hope it was different from what you usually do, and that's the magic, right? To come here today and just to learn you can encompass a different space with part of you, that you don't have to fracture internally every time you start to feel negative. And so besides that, I think coming back to our first exercise, right, besides befriending the darkness and our critics, the other thing is that's going to help create a shift is anchoring to the positive. So just remembering that other narrative, which you shared with the person next to you today. Where am I strong? Where do I feel good? Where am I proud? Who are the people I love, right? And to remember that, to keep coming back to that. Love actually has the strongest charge, remembering what you love, where you feel love, who you love, the things you're proud of, so how you love yourself. So invariably, when you think of these things, you feel strong within yourself. All right. So I'm going to close with just a little story. According to an ancient legend, there was a time when the gods were trying to decide where to hide the secret to peace and joy. They didn't want the humans to find it until they were ready to appreciate it. One god said, "Let's hide it on the highest mountain." Another said, "No, it would be found there too soon and too easily." Another god suggested hiding it deep in the densest forest, but that location was rejected for the same reason. After many other suggestions and rejections, the wisest god said, "Hide it in the human heart. That's the last place they'll look." And the gods all agreed, so that's where they put it. Thank you. I hope that was interesting, different.